Hello everyone, my name is Gabriel for hotcars.com, and today we're talking mid-size sedans with this, the 2021 Hyundai Sonata SEL Plus. And I say sedans in plural because while it might not look it, this is exactly the same as the Kia K5 we tested last week. Same engine, same transmission, and same overall chassis. So I'll be really interested to see how the two stack up, because chances are if you're in the mid-size sedan market, you're gonna be comparing these two. Now, we're gonna go over what I think are the Sonata's greatest strengths. We're gonna do a full little tour. We're gonna take it out on the road, and I'm gonna show you everything you need to know about this brand new Sonata. Now, before we do any of that, I wanna make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel because it helps us out a ton. Now let's get into it. And I figured we could start with the 2021 Sonata's front end because there's a lot to like here. Now, like its K5 sibling, there is a large grille up front, but this one is gloss black. Now remember, some of these are specific to this exact trim level. Lower trim levels might not have all of these fancy touches, but if we're looking at the SEL Plus, you're gonna get all of this. Now, one of the nicer touches of having a large Hyundai badge in the front is the fact that you can hide all of your necessary sensors for your cruise control and sort of driver assist features behind the badge, so it's not just out in the open, and you don't even need a little cutout like kind of like the K5 has to let those sensors kind of see through. Now, moving on to the headlights. These headlights are very, very unique. It's probably something I've never seen across the entire auto industry, is the fact that while they have a sharp daytime running LED that borders the headlight itself, there is a LED strip that goes well into the fender, and it gives this car a very unique look. Now, when I first saw this car's front end, I thought, you know, kind of fishy, big mouth kind of thing, but seeing it in person, it's very, very sharp. And one of the compliments that I could give this car is that it looks very much upscale and it has a very sort of refined aesthetic. Now, our particular car has this beautiful deep shade of blue, which in sort of the shade like this, the color looks very dark. But as soon as the sunlight hits it, there's so much sort of pearl into that actual paint that it really, really does shine. It's a very dynamic color. It's probably the one I would pick. Now, moving along to the side, you'll notice that this particular tester has these larger 19-inch wheels, and that's something you get with the SEL Plus, and again, they're unique to the trim level. But I want to draw your attention to two things. For starters, you get Pirelli P0 all-season tires. Again, they're not too noisy on the road, but in a state like Florida, I would probably switch it to summer tires for better performance in the rain. But this little vent up here, again, just like in the K5, it's functional. It actually does allow air to come in. There's an opening on the underside of the fender. So it is, you know, a nice little aesthetic touch, but it's also functional. Now, since we're talking design, I want to talk about the Sonata's side profile, because there's a lot of nice little details here that could easily be missed if you're not paying attention. And there are two major design elements on the doors, which not only help to sort of break up the design, but it gives it a bit more of a dynamic look. Now, remember, structurally this is very similar to that K5, so it also has that sort of almost hatchback kind of look where the roof sort of melts into the trunk line. There is no hard line separating your roof and your trunk. However, unlike that K5, there is no chrome strip that goes all the way to the trunk, so there's a bit more of a separation. I would say out of the two, the K5 looks a little bit more hatchback, a little bit closer to that Stinger, whereas this Hyundai has a bit more of its unique, more sedan style look, sort of departing away from its K5 sibling. So I think at this point we should talk about the Sonata's rear end, because this is one of the parts that I wasn't totally sold on the car when I first got it about a week ago, but it's really grown on me. I really do like the effect of the light going across the entire trunk, and sort of you have Sonata in those nice big pronounced letters. I think overall, given how complex and how intricate the front end and all the styling lines that go across it, having all of these sharp edges, like for example in the tail lights, you have these little fins on top of the tail light itself, it really does go well together. So I think overall the design of the Sonata is very, very cohesive, and you have that sort of sharpness that carries along throughout the entire exterior of the car. So now that we're inside of the Sonata, I want to talk about its two main screens, because in front of me I have a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster, and over here in the center we have a 10.25-inch infotainment screen. Now this screen is optional. As standard you get an 8-inch screen, but again this one is sold as an optional extra within the premium pack, which costs $2,700. Now you do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. On here there is a wireless charger down here in the front, and one of the things that I want to draw your attention to is the fact that this interior is not black. It's actually dark gray with sort of red accents throughout, and I think it's a very nice touch, sort of going away from the standard black sort of dark interior that we get in most cars. But overall, the quality of the instrument cluster, the quality of this screen over here, they're both very, very high, and the colors match. Something that I see in other car makers when they use very different types of screens, that you have different colors, different textures, but these two here match nicely and everything looks nice and cohesive. Now in terms of Hyundai's infotainment system itself, it is, I found it a little bit more complicated to use. It took a little bit more getting used to than your standard Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which are very, very simple. But again, I'm not opposed to using it. I think it's fine. And also when you plug in Apple CarPlay, it pops in here in the center and gives you the access to quickly switch between them. But for the most part, I've been using Apple CarPlay. That's what I use in most cars, and in this particular car it does take up the whole width of the screen, which I think is a nice touch. So now that we're on the move, let me talk you through this car's exact spec, because this Hyundai Sonata SEL Plus comes in at $32,000 once you factor in all your fees and such. Now we're talking about a car with a base price of around $27,000, but this car has one crucial option, which is the premium pack. Now that'll run you $2,700, but you do get the larger 10.25-inch screen, you get Bose speakers, you get the panoramic sunroof, and the most important of all is you get the highway driving assist, which is a system that I've actually really enjoyed using. I don't typically like driving with driver assist features on. I feel like, especially when you get a little distracted, they tend to ping pong the car within the lane. I like, having control over the car, but I like the fact that this system is so nicely integrated into the background as you're driving. So again, it's not a replacement for your steering inputs. It's more so in case you get distracted or in case you're not paying attention, it does keep you in your lane, doesn't allow you to swerve out of it. I like that the system is nicely integrated into the background as I'm driving. There's the only visual clue that I have letting me know that that system is running is a small green little steering wheel on the dash, which it's just lit up. There's no label or anything. It's just letting me know that the system is running in the background. This car has a 1.6 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, 180 horsepower, 195 pounds-feet of torque. If those stats sound familiar, that's because this is the exact same engine we tested last week in the Kia K5. Admittedly, you also get the exact same 8-speed automatic transmission, and I like the fact that it is obviously an 8-speed automatic transmission. It's not a CVT. It really is surprising how much of a difference it makes from jumping into a CVT car to back to one with a traditional automatic transmission, how much quieter, smoother everything feels. Again, I think it's a very good choice by Hyundai. But let's talk about that engine, because remember, 180 horsepower, this sedan, remember it's a mid-size sedan, so it has a fair bit of chunk to it, but I think 180 horsepower for a daily driver in this scenario is more than fine. Now, over the mileage that I've covered in this car, I've averaged just around 30 miles to the gallon, which admittedly is, not exactly great, but I have had a bit of a heavy foot with it. The K5 that I drove last week, I managed to average 32 miles to the gallon. So again, it really does depend on your driving habit. Now, one of the other more important features I think that we need to cover about the driving experience is how well put together everything feels. And I'm not talking just about interior quality. I'm talking about suspension, sound deadening, and steering. because again, just like the K5, there's actually some feel coming through the steering wheel. Again, it's not the world's most exciting car to drive, but the fact that it is just a little bit lively, it's nice. I like the fact that it's not completely removed from what's happening on the road. Suspension, again, very supple, very soft. It allows for a very comfortable daily driver without being, again, too sort of removed from the actual road, because you can feel what's going on, but again, it's not overly plush. And lastly, that sound deadening. That's something that's really impressed me about this car, because as Hyundai wants to move a little bit more up market, creating these nicer vehicles as we go into the future, I think sound deadening is one of the key features that lets you know that a car is really well put together. If you can get on the road and you don't have a lot of tire noise, you don't have a lot of wind noise sort of damaging the overall experience, I think that's the mark of a very good car. And I think this 2021 Sonata does that extremely well. Like I've said, I've been driving this car for a week straight, and as a daily driver, if I don't care about a badge, if I don't care about having super flashy features, I think for the money, this is a really, really good option. Now that I've driven the K5 and the Sonata actually back to back, I can, sort of begin to pick favorites. And I think for me, the Sonata is the way to go in terms of between those two. And I say that for a couple of reasons. I like the interior layout of the Sonata a little bit better. I like the fact that there is no shifter for the automatic transmission. We get these little buttons down here. It really just opens up and makes this whole dash layout look a little bit cleaner. Again, this Sonata, and remember, this is the exact same price as that K5 that I tested. They're both 32 grand. But in this Sonata, I do have a digital instrument cluster, which is something I didn't get in the K5. And it's also really, really nicely done. It reminds me, it's, for my mind at least, very similar to some of the Volkswagen systems. Very clear information, easy to read, and very adjustable, something that I very much like. In terms of downsides, because again, no car is perfect, and I think my personal downside would be back to that engine, because even though it does have 195 pounds-feet of torque, and that torque comes in down low, which is helpful in sort of more city driving, traffic type of scenarios, so you can make use of little gaps and stuff in traffic, like I'm about to. And while there is, again, a little bit of torque down low, but it's missing, I think, to me, a little bit of punch. I think at this price, with this type of car, I think I would want a little bit more oomph. There is a more powerful Sonata, but then again, that kicks up the price. I'm not asking for the sort of top of the line engine for the Sonata. I think, again, that's very much sporty oriented. There's a lot of horsepower. I just want something perhaps a little bit in between that and this. It's not like it's bad. Again, for daily driving scenarios, if you're just gonna coast on the highway and you want better fuel economy, then again, the smaller, less powerful engine is the way to go. But I think for me, I think I would personally prioritize a bit of drivability and a bit of extra power, considering this midsize sedan's overall size. But again, that's just one of my more minor drawbacks. So there we have it, the 2021 Hyundai Sonata SEL Plus. And for me personally, this car doesn't shine in any one particular area, but I think that's actually a good thing, because it's a very good all-rounder. As far as daily drivers go, it's quiet, comfortable, refined. It does pretty much everything you'd want out of a daily driver. Now, comparing it directly to that K5, I think this one has the better looks out of the two. This is probably the one that I would personally pick. This one just, I think, looks a little bit sharper, but regardless, you kind of can't go wrong either way because they are so similar. Now for me, the only true downside is still that engine. I find it just a little bit, I would want that engine and transmission combo to be a little bit more responsive, perhaps a little bit more powerful. Now granted, there is a more powerful version of this Sonata available with a 2.5 liter turbocharged engine, just shy of 300 horsepower. But again, that bumps up the price. For 32 grand, I think there's a ton of value here. I think there's a good package on offer here, and I like it a ton. I really don't have any major faults with this car. I dig it. And with that, I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you guys like it and subscribe to the channel because it helps us out a ton. I'll see you again really soon.